No, I hadn't seen Shallow Grave, but I had met with Danny and Andrew for Shallow Grave for the movie way back, and I think we went through 2 or 3 meetings or something like that, and I'd read for it a couple of times, and then it was always down in London, and then the guys came up to Glasgow to see me again, and somebody I didn't know who else was. I didn't know Ewan McGregor was involved at that time, and there was someone else. It was 3 of us that were up for the part, and Danny asked. I read it and he was happy and stuff, and he says, could you read it again, but maybe less working class? I was like, no. And he said, and then Danny's very clever, he says, no you can't, or no you won't. I said, no I won't. I don't see it like that, you know. And so we had a laugh about it, and he said to you, do you want to give it a go? I said, genuinely man, I really don't want to do it, you know. So he was great. He said, well maybe we just have to agree to disagree, and this and that. I suddenly thought, I've just lost myself this job, you know, in that stupid moment. And that was it. So we kind of said goodbye. And then years later, a couple of years later, whenever it was, Trainspotting came up. And then Danny Boyle wanted to see me, and I thought, oh, wait a minute. What is this about? Is this some kind of power thing here, you know? And when I went in to see him in an office somewhat like this, came in the door, and my arse had barely hit the couch, and he said, so Ewan's playing Renton, which part do you want to play? Which I'd never had that said to me before, ever, in any film, anything that I'd done, you know. So I didn't know what to say, obviously. I was completely shocked. I really don't know. And it was Danny who in the end kind of persuaded me that Begbie would be a good idea. Well, I mean, when he said to me, he said, you know, that Ewan was going to be playing Renton, because I'd done some pieces from the book. I had a theatre company in Glasgow at that time, and we'd stolen some pieces from the book, and I played Renton on stage and stuff like that. So it was a kind of it was an obvious kind of choice for me to go towards that. So when that was out of the water in the first 5 seconds, I thought, well, the only thing I could come up with was Sick Boy, similar, you know, ages and stuff like that, as we were at the time. And so I sort of suggested that, and he didn't say no at all. And then he said, well, what about Begbie, you know? I said, I can't see it, you know. And he was interested as why not, and because I'd done some stuff from the book, I just seen him as this giant, a big guy, big scary, you know, monster. And this is Danny. I wish I could claim this, but I can't. But he said, no, he says small psychos are the best. He's actually right. And I understood, but remember that, you know. So I took it away, didn't say yes in the meeting, you know. And he said, look, away, think about it, you know, and come back. And he said, if you want to play Sick Boy, then we can talk about it. He said, but I'd really like you to consider playing Begbie. But a week later, I said, okay. I've spoken about this, you know, a couple of times in the past, and people always kind of either smile and go, "Oh, I get it," because I seen him. I thought there's something in him which is so intensely homophobic. You think, well, is he gay? You know, and I kind of think maybe he is, or maybe he was, or like dabbles at least, because you know, why does he sleep in the same bed with this junkie scum? You know, why does he keep going back to this guy? Why does he keep invite him into his life? Because he despises that world, or so he says. And then when he picks up the transsexual in the club, number one, why does he pick up a transsexual? Number two, why doesn't he just completely destroy this person? But he doesn't. He pulls away and lets it go. And then on the bed in the London squat, when Renton brings it up, he suddenly, I mean, that's the point where you think he could kill him there for mentioning that. And he says, Flynn, I flick the cigarette at him, and Ewan jumps away from the wall. It says, a joke's a joke, but you mention that again, you're fucking dead. So there's something really tight inside him, you know, about that whole subject. And so I pinned a lot of it in that. Even the way he looked, you know, even the way he dressed and stuff, like he's quite prim, quite proper with moustache and stuff like that. I was trying to give hints that maybe he's not this big hard man that he's trying to make himself out to be. It's just wonderful, Danny, and there's not enough words that you can use to describe somebody like Danny. He's such a fantastic man, just a great guy, you know, and someone who he's in your corner the whole time, you know. Each scene is so, he spends so much time on each scene and each character that you think it's entirely about you. He makes you believe that this thing is really about us, you know, and that was the first time I'd ever really heard that when I think about it. Because he you know, during Trainspotting, we had 10 days rehearsal. He showed us all his photographs, all his little, you know, images that he was trying to kind of pin it on and trying to kind of to recreate. And no director had ever done, you know, in the theatre, had ever done that with me before. And this group of boys that were in the room, you know, the Ewans, you know, Johnny, myself, Kevin, you know, it was we are going to do this, we are going to try and do this. What do we think about this? You know, and showed us films which, again, I'd never witnessed that before, actually buying out a cinema and sitting down and say, watch these movies. They were interesting ones as well. The Lost Boys, The Hustler, The Exorcist. That was the 3 movies that he wanted us to see. So it was spectacularly different, you know, Danny, and really everything was coming from the heart with the man. And my biggest memory working with Danny, the few times I have, is his laughter. And it's him laughing and people cutting. Danny, he's enjoying it so much. He gets so carried away, he's watching it, he's in there, you know. I think the longer it went on, what I felt was there's not an awful lot of story here. You know, that I really began to realise that the narrative was quite pretty thin, and it was a surprise to see it when it eventually came out, that it made sense in the way that it did. But when you describe it, you can describe it in about 10 words. There isn't an awful lot there. So it was to do an awful lot of style in there, and I mean, we have to kind of talk about Brian Tufano, the cameraman, as well. I think Brian Tufano, he doesn't get mentioned an awful lot with Trainspotting, but the way he made that film look really kicked off a whole kind of generation of filmmakers then, you know, for sure, you know, trying to emulate that style. Even the colours that they used, the orange and the lime greens and stuff, then everybody was wearing T-shirts like that for like 5-6 years later. Yeah, and that was remarkable. And I think he was able to do that, Danny, because of that collaborative way that he has of working. Everyone could put their tuppence with him. Most definitely. I could see other films, you know, in the decade that followed it, blatantly copying it or trying to copy it, failing badly. But some other films just doing it the right way, picking little things. I can see similarities to Trainspotting. There are similarities to Danny's direction for sure. Would they expect me to be crazy? Not really, you know, not really. I think that I've been fortunate enough to play a variety of roles in my life that I think people know that I'm an actor. Certainly by now they do. But even at the time, you know, there was maybe about 5 or 6 things I'd done around about that same time. You know, particularly Full Monty, something like that, where you can see this isn't, you know, he's not just a psycho that Danny's found in the street corner. You know, he's actually an actor.